The Spotlight, shining a light on podcasts and videos that have caught our attention.
Hi and welcome to The Spotlight. I'm Jen Spiker and today I'm highlighting a brand new podcast series that's been added to the Vision app. Sunburnt Souls is hosted by Ps Dave Quak, who speaks to a different guest each week. However, in this first episode of the podcast, Dave is being interviewed so we can get to know him better and understand what it's like for him living in the complicated overlap of faith and mental health.
The Spotlight with Jen Spiker.
Hello and welcome to Sunburnt Souls. I am sitting across the table from Dave Quak, and today he is going to share with us a little bit about his story, his history and how he came to be here. So let's just start with your name, your age and your favourite chocolate.
All right. My name is David Trevor Quak. I realise that is a terrible name, but I didn't choose it. I am 43 years old and my favourite chocolate is choc mint, dark choc mint.
Dark choc mint.
Yes. I like that. You either love or hate dark choc mint.
Oh, yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You're obviously a pastor.
Yes.
How did you get into that pastoral space?
Kind of by accident. So I became a Christian when I was about 20. You know, I became a Christian and I was quite zealous, extroverted. So usually that's the combination for someone to make you a youth leader. So zealous and extroverted. And I started serving in a church and quite quickly became the youth pastor there. And then from there, that was in Brisbane. And then from there, I ended up doing a placement for evangelism at a church on the Gold Coast. And that pastor, I mean, long story short, he approached us and poached us and got us down to be youth pastors down on the Gold Coast. And so we were youth pastors for about 8 years.
We being you and your wife?
Sorry, my wife and I, yes. We've always been pastors together. Not we as in there's two of me. And then we planted a church about 12 years ago and have been leading that ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've been in ministry for
20
years.
Yes.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you. 20 years, been married for 20 years as well. Got two kids. So my son is 15. His name's Josiah. And I've got a daughter called Milani who's nearly 13. Hormones all over the place. But it's good. They're good kids. I like those two. They're good kids. I'm happy with them.
They are good. All of the conversations that you and I have had over my lifetime have always been really real and raw and deep.
Yeah.
And I know that that's what you want for this podcast as well. So let's talk about your mental health journey, where that all started for you and what that's looking like for you now.
All right. So I have always thought that my mind was a little bit outside the box. That's actually the underpinning reason I wanted to get into this podcast, is because since being an adult, I've struggled with major ups and downs. And then about 5 years ago, I got diagnosed with anxiety and depression. Started on that process. I went to my GP, who's a legend. His name's Paul. And he did a mental health assessment with me and started me on the process of chatting about my mental health. As part of that, he referred me to a psychologist. And he was an awesome guy called Sean. And then I went to him for a bunch of sessions, which then led me to go seeing a psychiatrist. And as part of journeying with this psychiatrist, he acknowledged, yes, Dave, you've got anxiety and you've got depression. And he helped me work out the medication regime with that. But he also diagnosed me with a condition called bipolar type 2, which is a bigger condition which has anxiety and depression as kind of like characteristics of that.
And to define, just to go back, bipolar, from what I understand, when you're talking about those manic sort of episodes, because everyone has those fluctuations in their emotional response. You could be really heightened and all that sort of stuff. But it doesn't last for a super long amount of time, or, you can sort of calm yourself down. But from my understanding, those manic sessions last over anywhere between 4 and 18 days.
Yeah.
Is that about right?
Well, it is.
Depending on your diagnosis.
Yeah. And I don't know if I'm an overachiever, but my manic episodes could go for like a month or 2 months.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So
Which
you can
means
imagine
that you're bipolar 2, is that right?
It is. It is. Yeah. So in my life, I've been quite open with the anxiety and depression. What I haven't been open till probably right now, Amelia, is the truth that actually falls under my bigger diagnosis of bipolar type 2. Yep. So both anxiety and depression can be symptoms of having bipolar type 2. And so bipolar type 2, it used to be called manic depression or manic depressive people. And so basically as the name sounds, it's two ends of the spectrum, bipolar. Like, you can get incredibly elated and then incredibly defeated. And so for me, I'd get these periods of mania that would last for, like I said, 1 to 2 months. And in those times, I would be fixated on certain things. So maybe I'd research something I'd want to like an initiative I'd want to start and I'd research it to death. Or, I'd look at an idea and I couldn't stop fixating on it. So, and it'd grip me in that it'd be the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing I think about when I go to sleep, and it'd consume me. Now, you got to understand on the good side, if it was something that was good for me and good for even ministry, the kingdom, my family, it can work out well, but a lot of times it didn't. So I'd get fixated on maybe trying to make money or something and then make poor financial decisions.
Right.
And then that'd come back to bite me, and I'd be convinced that it's a great decision. Like when you're in a manic phase, you think that your ideas are brilliant. You think, man, this is going to change the world. And some of them might change the world, but a lot of them destroy your world.
Yeah.
So I'll get in these manic phases and I'll be, researching and finding people who agree with me, and I'll be absolutely sure. And then unfortunately for my wife and my family, they've been the recipients of countless sales pitches.
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of guys wine and dine their wife because they want to get sex later or whatever else. But for me, I'd wine and dine Jess because later I'm I've got a sales pitch for you, So she'd be like, oh, Dave's being extra nice tonight. And then by the end of the night, I'd light a candle. I'd be like, Jess, don't you think it would be great if we moved to Vanuatu? And she'd be like, what? I've done all the research. I've found a house for us. I've worked out the budget. I've found someone to rent our house while we're away. We can bring the dog. Everything's sorted out. Let's move to Vanuatu. And in my head, it makes sense. Everything's great. And I feel for her and the family because there's been countless sales pitches, but they're gracious and they're on the journey with me. But so that's what happens when I'm manic. And then when I'm depressive, I really go from thinking my ideas can change the world and that I'm a key player in that, all the way through to I just got to get a job, packing shelves. I don't want to see another person again. It would be awesome if I could work in a factory stuffing envelopes, and just want to withdraw from the world and think, anything I've achieved has been useless. Really, as the name bipolar sounds, you really go from one to the other. And so in speaking to my psychiatrist, he's the one who diagnosed me with this after doing a lot of work. And I'm thankful for it because once I had the diagnosis and I could do some research about the symptoms and some of the characteristics, it kind of made me feel like I was understood. When I read the symptoms, I'm like, I do that, I do that, I do that, I do that. And it then provided a framework in order for me to then move forward.
Yeah, that's it. And realizing that you're not a crazy person.
No, because you feel like one.
Yeah, definitely.
Until you meet another bipolar person and you click with them and you're like, this guy's a genius. His ideas are fantastic. We should go into business together. And you think you'll be millionaire.
You're in business together.
Yeah, that's right. The amount of, dead websites and ABN numbers and all these other things that I've set up, Amelia, it's just ridiculous. I'm constantly getting reminders from GoDaddy about a website I started 5 years ago So it's got those side effects. But anyway, with the psychiatrist, he diagnosed me with bipolar after a big, a long journey with him and the psychologist as well. And then they started me on a couple of medicines, medication. One is called sodium valproate. So that is a mood stabilizer. It actually started as an epilepsy medication. And then this was, I think, back in the 60s or maybe earlier. And then they just found that it also had these, positive effects on people with bipolar. You know how that happens with medicine? Sometimes one thing's designed for one thing and it helps in another area.
Yeah.
So I'm on that. And then I'm also on an antipsychotic called Seroquel. Now, saying that out loud is pretty confronting, saying you're on an antipsychotic. And if you Google Seroquel, it's also another quite popular medication, but I'm on 25 milligrams a day, which is enough to actually just bring me into a calm place of sleep that I do sleep. Because when I'm manic, I just can't sleep and don't sleep, and it just perpetuates and gets worse and worse.
So those medications have been game changers for you.
They have. I am so thankful to God for these medications. So it took a while to get there, the balance of the dose and that it probably took a year to figure out the balance before everything was sorted out. But once it's sorted out, and now if I stick to the regime, everything's fantastic. The only thing that's difficult is if I forget to plan ahead and I, mess up the regime, it does affect me. So even last night we went to the cricket. My wife, she's epic, but she's just this 2020 cricket fan, and she's just such a jock. She stays up all night watching cricket. When the last test was on, she was getting up at like 2 a.m. and just watching the cricket all day. It's in the family too. Her grandma's a cricket jock and her dad and everyone else. Anyway, so we were at the cricket last night and I forgot to take my sodium valproate with me, which is the mood stabilizer. I'm not manic at the moment, but I'm like 70%. I'm energetic and I'm managing it. So everything's quite good, but I've got to watch it at this point in time in my life. And I didn't take my mood stabilizers with me, and I could feel by about 9 o'clock I was just getting real irritated by the people around me. And there was this kid next to me making noise. Not my kid, another kid. My kids were making noise, but I got time for them. There's just a random kid making noise, and it was just getting. And then they had fireworks at halftime, and I know people love fireworks, but I'm like, man, this is loud.
Yeah.
And it was just irritating. So I'm thankful for the medication, but it does have me in a place where I do depend on it, and I'm thankful, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sort of similar. Like, I've always struggled with anxiety and depression, and I remember when I first went on my medication, it almost felt ungodly.
Yeah, okay. You're right.
Did you experience anything like that?
So this is the thing.
Going deep real straight away.
Yeah, no, let's get there. Because the catch-22 with being a pastor, or not even just a pastor, I think any Christian, any functioning Christian who loves Jesus, is that our theology on healing and how God intervenes really affects our mental headspace when it comes to medication.
Yes.
Because you've got two ends of the spectrum. Like, you've got people right down one side that think that anything mental health is just it's a demonic force that needs to be prayed over and delivered, and then you'll be set free. And then you got the other end where it's like, okay, there's no spiritual attachment to mental health. It is just a, medical condition. And if you have the right chemical,
just like diabetes, if you've got diabetes, you need to take insulin.
There's elements of truth, I think, in both ends of the spectrum. But then there's a million areas in between as well that are really complicated to figure out.
On the Spotlight, we've been listening to Dave Quak tell part of his story of being a pastor with bipolar. As Dave says, Christian theology plays a huge part in our understanding of mental health, and Sunburnt Souls seeks to help us wrestle with that messy intersection. New episodes of Sunburnt Souls are added to the Vision app each week. Find them by tapping the podcast tab and searching for Sunburnt Souls. My name is Jen Spiker. Join me next time on The Spotlight as we hear more of Dave's story and how he's coming to terms with a diagnosis of bipolar while pastoring a local church.
For more great podcasts and videos like the one featured today, check out vision.org.au or the free Vision app.